Bernie Sanders isn't simply running for president. He's building a progressive movement that's setting up to challenge the American status quo. Hey everybody, how's it going? Thanks for stopping by. As we all know, the American primary season is far too long. We're only now starting the debate portion, and we're not even going to start voting. There's not even going to be any voting at all until early next year. It's far too long a process, but one thing we do know is that Bernie Sanders is among the very favorites to win the nomination. This is fantastic to see because while he gave it a good go in 2016, Hillary Clinton always had, a pretty noticeable lead over him. And whether or not we want to think that was a fair primary or not, Hillary Clinton did win by millions of votes. Whereas this time, Bernie Sanders has a fundamentally better chance of actually winning this thing. But Bernie Sanders isn't just running to be president. And he's not just running to get the Democratic nomination. Bernie Sanders is running to change American society, to change American politics. He's running a movement-based campaign rather than a purely technocratic or electoral-based campaign. And this is pretty clear to me because back in 2016, Bernie's campaign, I don't know if you saw the pictures, Bernie sort of started his campaign by talking to a few people in a park. Very informal, very rudimentary, very non-impressive if we're being frank. But over time, he would fill multiple stadiums all across the United States, engaging millions of people, a lot of them young, not just Americans, but progressives all over the world, with his message and his values. That's what it was about. I'm sure Bernie Sanders wanted to win. He wanted to be president. He wanted to actually implement his vision. But Bernie knew by simply running and simply articulating what he believes and what he's been fighting for all of these years, that he would make an impact. And it turns out he was right. Because even though Hillary Clinton lost that election and Donald Trump won, Bernie Sanders has indelibly marked the 2020 campaign, with many candidates taking positions on Medicare for all, or on, reforming, criminal justice, or on strengthening the role of unions, or on taking on Wall Street, rejecting big corporate money for their campaigns. Bernie Sanders has shifted the general American discourse to the left, and we're all better off for that. Americans certainly, but even us, even progressives around the world here in Canada, Bernie Sanders is acting as an inspiration to us all, and it's great to see. And it didn't come from a pure desire to be president. It's actually about his desire to plant the seeds for a progressive future. Because, Bernie, he said, it's not me, it's us. It's not, myself and you trying to be president. It's us trying to build a political movement, trying to, enact a political revolution. And that's so inspiring, and it's so selfless in that sense. Bernie Sanders is an older gentleman. We know he's in the latter part of his life. Even if he lives another 20 years, that'd be quite exceptional. Bernie is planting the seeds for progressives to carry the torch. People like Ocasio-Cortez, for instance. And so this is why his movement building is extremely important. This is why Bernie is using his massive, infrastructure that he's built from 2016, not just to get primary votes, not just to fill the caucuses and win the Electoral College or win the delegate totals. Bernie is trying to use the massive infrastructure, the data, and the money he's earned to actually help progressive causes. And there's two key instances. A few weeks ago, I don't know if you saw this, but a few weeks ago, Bernie Sanders used his massive email list to basically inform his supporters about striking workers and their need of support on the picket line. And many people showed up largely because Bernie brought that message to them. Bernie took a story about workers on strike, a fundamental, fight for workers' justice, the act of striking, the act of picket lining, the act of, occupying that space and letting the public be known that there are workers here facing injustice in the workplace and they need your support. In our times, this often goes underreported or unreported or misreported by mainstream media. But by Bernie Sanders using his platform, using Twitter and using his email list and his general infrastructure to promote these workers and their causes, and this isn't the only time Bernie Sanders has done this. Bernie Sanders has stood with striking workers and stood with workers more generally on his massive platforms. When he does this, he's not just, trying to run for president. Bernie Sanders is empowering working class people and working class organizations. When Bernie Sanders says he stands with Uber and Lyft drivers when they went on a kind of one-day strike, he's using his massive platform to take a side, to not just have this general, mom and pop apple pie statement that, I support workers and, their general right to a decent life, but he won't take sides in industrial conflict. Bernie Sanders is showing that he'll take sides for workers against bad employers, and that he won't just take sides with his words, he'll take sides with his actual power, which is based in the data he holds and in the reach he holds. And just recently, just in the last couple days, it's been reported that Bernie Sanders has used his massive email list to warn people that ICE would be, warn people about ICE deportations, to warn people about Trump's attacks on undocumented people and on the communities that undocumented people live in. Bernie Sanders is using his reach, using his connections and his network to fight against racial injustice. Bernie Sanders has also used his platform to kind of call out the human rights abuses that are emanating from Trump's concentration camps. Bernie Sanders is doing none of this to directly bolster his presidential campaign. I'm sure that with some of it, supporting these workers, supporting undocumented people, supporting those facing racial injustice, will bring supporters to his cause. But more than that, it's actually bringing his supporters to those causes. Bringing his supporters to the picket line and against the child concentration camps and against racial injustice and against, tech companies like Uber and Lyft abusing, outdated employment law to exploit workers and exploit, people just trying to eke out a living. This is why Bernie Sanders is special. Other candidates, they're really not doing this, and they're certainly not doing this to the same extent. Bernie Sanders is running a different sort of presidential campaign. One that actually looks beyond the primary, and if we're being frank, even beyond the 2020 election itself, saying that win or lose, we're building a movement that's going to last beyond the election, and that's going to last beyond my lifetime. And that's what Bernie is saying. That this is more than about me, and in a sense, this will go beyond my natural life. And you young people, the people who bolster my movement, you'll have to carry that torch. I'll only be around for so long, but I'm going to help as best as I can, as long as I can, to make this movement stable. So this is why I think he deserves that kind of left support. And this is why Bernie is so special. And this is why his presidential campaign is inspiring people beyond, knocking on doors just to get, people to the primary polls or getting them to the caucus. Again, I don't want to downplay the importance of Bernie Sanders winning the primary and winning the presidency. I don't want to downplay that at all. But I do want to say that if Bernie Sanders really is going to be a different president, it's not only about his policies. It's not only about Medicare for all and supporting workers and fighting against the corporate and social and economic elite, but it's about a president who envisions his role differently. A president who sees himself as the builder of a movement to reshape society that goes beyond Congress and Senate and goes into the day-to-day lives of working people and their families. That's why he's so special, and that's why I think this is a very exciting time for progressive politics, not just in the United States, but everywhere else. So guys, thanks for stopping by again. If you enjoyed that video, I would appreciate if you like, comment, and subscribe. Doing so helps to share the message, letting people know that Bernie Sanders is running a different campaign, not just on policy, but on his vision for what it means to run for president. And if you can, I would appreciate your support on Patreon. Your support there helps to improve the quality and quantity of content on this channel, but it also helps to bring a balance to YouTube, to really challenge the far-right forces that dominate this platform, to let people know that this is a space in which left-leaning people, pro-worker people, pro-progress people can make content and find an audience and build a community of like-minded thinkers. So guys, thanks again, and I'll see you in the next video.